It's so hot today. On a day like today, I'd like to wake up to a nice refreshing cup of Rei Matcha, which is a cold matcha. I'll show you how to make one. There's actually maybe two ways to make this, but I'll show you the better way to make one, and also when you should use the other method. So let's get started. Hi, I'm Yuki. I'm the founder of Tea Life, and here we break down Japanese tea so you can become a Japanese tea expert. So what is Rei Matcha in the first place? Rei Matcha is cold matcha. So all you have to do is you have to make Usucha matcha, which is the traditional thin tea preparation of matcha, and then you put ice inside, or you just pour it over ice. That's all there is to it. It's really simple. That's Rei Matcha. Now, the difference between a Rei Matcha and iced matcha americano would be that for the iced matcha americano, usually it's diluted with water a little bit more, so it'll be a little bit more thin. The Rei Matcha will still come in its pure form, so you'll be able to enjoy the full essence of the flavors of the matcha. Another difference between an iced matcha americano might be the foam. So for a Rei matcha, you'll still have that thick microfoam on top of the drink if that's something that you like. Okay, let's talk about the setup for the Rei matcha today. We'll start with making a matcha paste as we always do. So we'll take 2 grams of matcha and then we'll mix with 10 milliliters of room temperature water to make the initial matcha paste. Then we'll take 80 degrees Celsius hot water and then we'll add 50 milliliters of water inside that paste and then we'll whisk it to make a standard Usucha matcha. Then once we have that, we'll just dump ice inside, or actually we'll pour it over ice and then we'll drink it. As simple as that. The matcha we'll use today, we'll open a can of wako, which is an excellent matcha. It's a delicious matcha by Maruki Koyamayan, and we'll see how it goes. The other method that I was mentioning about in terms of making a matcha is when you directly mix it with cold water. And we don't want to use that, we don't want to take that approach today. I'll explain that later why. Okay, so here we go. Here's our wako. So we're going to start by opening this can of wako. It's a brand new can. You have to be careful with Koyama and Maruki matcha because there's so powdery. It's gonna fly all over the place when you open it. The great aroma already is erupting in my nose. Beautiful matcha. Hope you can see. All right. So I don't usually use a sift, but I'm just gonna use that today anyways. We're gonna measure 2 grams of matcha. Okay, so you just sift the matcha. So we have 2 grams here, and then we're going to take 10 milliliters of room temperature water, and then we'll make the thick paste first. So as usual, this is the important step to make sure your matcha is completely smooth. As long as you do this step, you don't really need to sift your matcha, although I did that today anyways. And this is the part that you should really enjoy about making your matcha, because this is when the aroma really rises from the matcha. It's a great smell. Yeah, it's the part that I really love. And you can smell the flavors of wako, which is fantastic. And once you start to see that the matcha is nice and shiny, the glow you can see, and then it's ready to mix with water. So this is 80 degrees water, and then we'll add 50 milliliters of this warm water inside the bowl. And then we want to whisk this just as we do normal usucha. Usually I don't make it too foamy, but today I'm going to try to keep the foam after we pour it onto the ice. So that's a nice bit of microfoam we have here. So this is the thick microfoam version. Now all we have to do is take some ice, and then you just take this matcha and dump it onto the ice. There you have it. Here's Rei Matcha. So here's the glass of Rei Matcha that I just made. So once it cools down, it's ready to drink. And you can see that I was able to keep the nice thick layer of microfoam on top of the cup. Itadakimasu. Oh wow, delicious. You can really taste the sweetness and the umami and lots of the layers of the taste of the wako as well. So they have lots of the bright notes as well. And really low astringency and bitterness for the wako. It's really nice. Extremely smooth. This is going to go in an instant. Now for the other method of making the Rei Matcha, we just use cold water to mix the matcha in the first place and then use ice again. And the benefit of this, you might think, is that because you're using cold water in the first place, when you put it into ice, it's not going to dilute the matcha. So it's going to taste a little bit more thicker, is something that you might think. However, I still recommend you actually making a hot matcha first and then dumping it into the water because the taste profile actually changes. By mixing matcha with hot water, what happens is that you're able to get more flavors. You get the sweetness, the umami, you're able to extract those more. And then not only that, but multiple layers of the flavors, the complex layers, you're also able to extract from the matcha. So even after you cool it down with ice, you're still able to taste those flavors in the matcha. If you try to mix matcha with cold water in the first place, what happens is you won't be able to extract as much of the flavors. So the matcha will taste a little bit more flat. And that would be a little bit of a waste if you're using the great matcha like the wako we're using today. Now, on the other hand, if you're using a lower quality matcha and the matcha is a little bit more prominent in its astringency, then that's something that you'll be able to notice when you're drinking an iced or a Rei matcha. It'll be quite prominent, so the aftertaste will be a lot more astringent. And in that case, you want to think about how you could contain the astringency as much as possible. For this case, then it might be better to actually use cold water to whisk or mix the matcha in the first place. This way, you'll be able to contain the astringency more, and then you won't be able to feel too much of the astringency when you drink it. So it really depends on what type of matcha you're using. If you're using a premium matcha, for the wako, it's a high level Usucha grade matcha. It's so good. I actually even use it for koicha drinking as well. So that's the level of matcha we're drinking right now. For this case, it makes sense to make it with hot water. However, if you're using more of an entry grade, a lower side of the entry grade Usucha matcha, or even a culinary grade matcha, then the astringency will be quite prominent and it'll be noticeable when you're drinking it in reicha form. And in that case, you might want to mix it with cold water in the first place. So again, it really depends. Oh, one other approach that I heard about, which was really interesting, I tried this out as well, is you can actually make the Usucha matcha, like we just did, and then instead of dumping it into ice, what you can do is put it into the freezer for 30 minutes to cool it down, and that way it won't dilute with ice. So that's a method I heard recently, and I actually tried it. I thought it wasn't bad, but the only issue is that you still get the refrigerator's smell into the matcha. And it might be depending on the refrigerator, but the refrigerator we're using, or the freezer we're using, excuse me, we're talking about a freezer here. The freezer we're using is a relatively new one, and all we store here is matcha, the sealed matcha, so it shouldn't really have the smell. Having the freezer smell affecting the matcha in that kind of condition, I think means that for most freezers, you'll also get that smell as well. So while I thought that was a very interesting idea, I tried it and I thought that still the Rei matcha, the traditional way of making the Usucha matcha first and then putting that into ice was the better approach. I hope this video is helpful. I hope you can make a nice cup of Rei matcha at home maybe today. And I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.